Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Gharava Vahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vitvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Nice to see you all. My notes say the first thing I'm supposed to do is check to make sure we're recording. As you see, I no longer have the recorder here. We're recording. Okay, thank you. And welcome to you all. Also, welcome to all of our viewers taking this class online. Allow me to apologize in advance. We have a new camera and a new system, and new things can go awry. So if there are any technical problems in our class today, I apologize in advance. We'll see how it goes. We'll begin today. We're in the midst of chapter, the final, the very powerful part at the end of chapter 18. We'll begin with recitation, starting with verse, I can't see the verse number there, yeah. This is also new for me. There we go. Where are we? There we are. Okay. Yeah, we'll start here with verse 54. And as always, when I'm chanting, read the translation and then repeat after me. Brahma bhuta prasannatma, Brahma bhuta prasannatma, na shochati na kankshati, na shochati na kankshati, sama sarveshu bhuteshu, sama sarveshu bhuteshu, madbhaktim labhate param, madbhaktim labhate param, bhaktya mam abhijanati, bhaktya mam abhijanati, yavan yaschasmi tattvataha, yavan yaschasmi tattvataha, tato mam tattvato jnatva, tato mam tattvato jnatva, vishate taranantaram, vishate taranantaram, sarva karmanyapi sada, sarva karmanyapi sada, kurvano madvyapashrayah, kurvano madvyapashrayah, matprasaradavapnoti, matprasaradavapnoti, shashvatam paramavyayam, shashvatam paramavyayam, chetasa sarvakarmani, chetasa sarvakarmani, mayi sanyasya matparaha, mayi sanyasya matparaha, buddhi yogamupashritya, buddhi yogamupashritya, macchitta satatam bhava, macchitta satatam bhava, macchitta sarva durgani, macchitta sarva matprasadattarishyasi, matprasadattarishyasi, atachettvamahankaran, atachettvamahankaran, nashroshyasi vinangshyasi, nashroshyasi vinangshyasi, yarahankaramashritya, yarahankaramashritya, na yotsyahiti manyase, na yotsyahiti manyase, mityaisha vyavasayaste, mityaisha vyavasayaste. Yeah. Prakritistvam niyokshyati, prakritistvam niyokshyati. Very good. So, in our last class, we ended with these two really powerful verses, and there was a question on one verse. We had talked about this Brahma Bhutaha, which can be translated carelessly as having become Brahman. And then we had a long discussion about, can you really become Brahman? You already are that. The inner divinity is an already existent fact, already existent truth. It's a fact that is unrecognized. So that inner reality, Brahman, is covered by a so-called veil of ignorance. Because of that veil of ignorance, you fail to recognize your true nature as Ch.18 Atma, your true nature as Brahman. You fail to recognize. So Vedanta, as I said before, Vedanta doesn't give you anything. Vedanta removes that so-called veil of ignorance, allowing you to discover that true inner nature. The question here, Brahma Bhutaha, refers to an enlightened person whose self-concept has shifted from Brahma, has shifted to Brahma from the body-mind identification. Remember, we had talked at the end of the class about what my guru calls enlightened ahankara. We used that term at the end of the prior class. Enlightened ahankara means instead of identifying yourself as his body and mind, you identify yourself as being Brahman. I am Brahman. This is your vision. This is your understanding of yourself. Pujya Swamiji called that enlightened ahankara. Question continues. However, you also mentioned that you don't become Brahman, you're already Brahman, but isn't that shifting? I said shifting identification from body-mind to Brahman. Isn't that shifting an action that needs to be done and causes change? And doesn't change imply some sort of becoming? Absolutely, there's a change. But what changes? Does your true self undergo any change in the process of becoming enlightened? What changes, of course, is in your mind. That so-called veil of ignorance has been removed. You now recognize your true nature as Brahman, and your self-identity, ego. Ego is a mental construct. Ego lives in your mind. The ego undergoes transformation. If we want to say there's a transformation involved in the process of becoming enlightened, let's be very clear. What undergoes transformation? What doesn't undergo transformation is your true self, eternally divine. What does undergo transformation, tremendous transformation, is your mind. And the most consequential transformation that takes place is that mental suffering comes to an end. That is the transformation, not of Atma, but of the mind. So, having that question done, the next verse, then remember at the very end of the class, we talked about how Sri Krishna refers to bhakti in the higher sense, and that we need this to introduce the next verse. In the end of the class, we had also discussed the difference between para-bhakti and apara-bhakti. It's important to remember that right now. Para-bhakti, the higher bhakti, is worship of the God of the universe as a truth of yourself, not as some deity on an altar. Apara bhakti, the lower conventional bhakti, is all other forms of worship and devotion. So we can say para bhakti is the bhakti of an enlightened person. And the reason I wanted to restate that is in this series of verses, Sri Krishna is doing a wonderful job of undoing a mistake we commonly make. The mistake we commonly make is that we create these nice, neat little boxes. There's one box for jnanam, jnana yoga. There's another nice box for bhakti, devotion, bhakti yoga. There's another box for karma, karma yoga. There's another box for dhyana, dhyana yoga. And in modern times, the tendency is for us to categorize everything very nicely. Sri Krishna is doing his best here to erase the boundaries between these arbitrary distinctions. For Sri Krishna, we use language, we use words like jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, etc. But all of these are aspects of one sadhana, one collective spiritual practice which leads you forward on a path of spiritual growth. And the downside of categorizing them is that we not only categorize the spiritual practice, we categorize ourselves. I'm an intellectual person, that's why I study jnana yoga. Problem is, if that's the case, I'm ignoring bhakti yoga, meditation, and karma yoga, all of which I also need. Or if I say I categorize myself, I am an emotional person. Therefore, I practice bhakti yoga. But if you deny yourself the opportunity of following jnana and practicing karma yoga and meditation, again, you're making a mistake. This is the mistake of categorization. And Sri Krishna here is erasing those distinctions between the categories. Here, he's erased the distinction between jnana and bhakti, because para-bhakti is the bhakti of an enlightened person. If you have, I'm sorry to sound mathematical, but jnanam plus bhakti equals para-bhakti. How's that? I don't think you'll find that in a math book anywhere, but you get the point. Jnanam plus bhakti equals para-bhakti. He is deliberately combining the two and blurring the boundary between jnana and bhakti. All of this is to introduce the next verse in which he blurs more boundaries. Here he's blurring the boundary between bhakti and karma yoga. There is no boundary between the two. Karma yoga without bhakti doesn't exist. I'll say that again. Karma yoga without bhakti doesn't exist. Bhakti without karma yoga means you're just sitting there in front of the altar all day and all night. As soon as you get up, it becomes karma yoga. So karma yoga and bhakti are necessarily connected, and that's what Sri Krishna says in the next verse. Where am I here? Okay. Sarva karmanyapi sada, sarva karmanyapi sada, kurvano madvyapashrayah, kurvano madvyapashrayah, matprasaradavapnoti, matprasaradavapnoti. Shashvatam paramavyayam, shashvatam paramavyayam. Sada, always. Kurvanaha, always doing. Always doing what? Sarva karmani api. Let's break the words apart. Always doing all deeds, all actions. Always continually fulfilling your responsibilities. But the key word here is madvyapashrayaha. Mat, as I've said before, represents the pronoun I, me. So madvyapashrayaha, having your ashraya in me, Sri Krishna says, having your ashraya means place or location or foundation, and it's hard to get the right sense in English. Having Sri Krishna as your basis, as your foundation, it doesn't work in English. It's interesting. Madhyapashraya sounds so wonderful translated into English, and it sounds really clunky. And I'm trying to find a better expression. What Sri Krishna means is being continually connected to Sri Krishna while engaged in your actions. By the way, that's a definition of karma yoga, isn't it? Being continually connected to Ishvara, God of the cosmos, while you're engaged in your daily activities. That is karma yoga. Think about bhakti, and we've made this observation before. If you sit down in front of the altar, in fact, you might remember this, but my guru's observation is brilliant. He talks about a devotee, a bhakta, who sits in front of the altar and is overcome with bhakti. Tears are flowing down their face, and they do shashtanga namaskaram. They're spreading their body out in front of the altar. And then when they're done, they get up, walk out the door of the mandir, of the temple, and forget about everything that just happened. They go and re-engage themselves completely in worldly activities, forgetting about Ishvara altogether, forgetting about this profound devotional experience. As some of you remember, my guru called such a person a spasmodic devotee. That's his term. Obviously, that's not real bhakti. It's real emotion. Real emotions accompanied by a spasm of bhakti. But that spasm of bhakti and the emotions it produces very quickly wears off, as many emotions do, and it's over. We've already blurred the distinction between bhakti and jnanam. So when bhakti is infused with spiritual wisdom, you know that when you walk away from the altar, you're not walking away from Ishvara. You know that when you leave the temple, the God of the cosmos is as present outside the temple as he is on the altar. You know that very well, but it goes away. A real bhakta, you'll call it a pakka bhakta, is one who sees Ishvara on the altar, goes outside the temple, sees Ishvara outside the temple. Where? Everywhere. In the cars, in the trees, in the people, everywhere. This is jnana-infused bhakti. Jnana, if you like Sanskrit, jnana anuviddha bhakti. It's where it's not just an emotion. And this is so crucial. If bhakti is just an emotion, how stable are your emotions? Right. If bhakti is merely an emotion, you will be a spasmodic devotee. It will fade away instantly. That bhakti must be infused with jnanam so that you know that when you leave the temple, you are still in Ishvara's presence. And now here's where karma yoga comes in the door, blurring yet another boundary. Because when you go out of the temple, you're doing karma. First of all, you're opening the door. You're getting into your car as a karma, driving your car as a karma. If you have jnana-infused bhakti while you're in your car driving home, you will still feel that you are in the presence of Ishvara. Let me say that again. If you have this jnana-infused bhakti while you're driving home, it won't be so different than when you were sitting in front of the altar. Because everything, sarvam kalvidam brahma, famous statement in Chandogya Upanishad, all this is Brahman, all this is Ishvara, all this is divine. So, when you have this jnana-infused bhakti and you engage in activities, you're engaging in those activities madhyapashrayaha, with your attention appreciating the sacred presence of Ishvara. In the car, on the road, Ishvara is present. You get home, Ishvara is present. You go to work, Ishvara is present. You're answering the telephone, Ishvara is present. You're engaged in all these activities in the sacred presence of Ishvara. Think about how being in the presence of Ishvara at an altar may or may not be your thing, as they say in American English, but suppose you just feel at some, maybe in front of an altar in some other situation, you deeply, strongly feel Ishvara's sacred presence in you, in the world, in your life. Imagine carrying that feeling with you throughout the day. While you're doing dishes, while you're at your computer, all the time. That is Sri Krishna's definition of karma yoga, blurring the boundaries again and again, blurring the boundary between jnanam, knowledge, and bhakti, devotion, further blurring the boundary between bhakti and here karma yoga. It's all sadhana. Life is meant for sadhana. If your entire life, actually just to better establish again the importance of full-time sadhana. And when I say full-time sadhana, I'm not talking about people who wear this dress, because you and I know very well everyone who wears this dress doesn't necessarily involve themselves in full-time sadhana. I've mentioned here before, up in Kedarnath, meeting these other sadhus who are smoking marijuana all the time. That's not sadhana. In American English, they hang out and smoke pot and they gossip. That's what, honestly, that goes on. So anyway, full-time sadhana depends on karma yoga as taught by Sri Krishna. Not karma yoga as conventionally understood, but karma yoga as Sri Krishna teaches means you are constantly aware of Ishvara's presence while you're engaged in any and all activities. For example, right now, I'm engaged in the activity of teaching. And it's wonderful. First of all, it's a real privilege to be able to come here every Saturday and share with you these teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Obviously, this is part of my sadhana. This is my karma yoga. And karma yoga, how everything here and now is infused. I'm using that word too much. Ishvara is present here and now in everything. Everything I teach has come from Ishvara. In fact, if you know the mythology associated with Dakshinamurti Shiva, you know that all the teachings of Vedanta had its origin in Lord Shiva as Dakshinamurti Shiva, the first teacher. So whatever I have to teach you comes from Ishvara. Whatever skills I have in communication, Ishvara. And let's be honest, communication skills are crucial for a teacher. You can, know everything, but if you can't communicate properly, then it's wasted. So whatever communication skills are here are a gift. I couldn't create on my own. What can I do? I don't think you can consciously or deliberately learn how to do this. I think it's a gift. So whatever skill I have at communicating, it's Ishvara's gift. And then further, I'm communicating all this to Ishvara in 100 forms. It's like on our altar, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you look at the altar, if I look out here, I can count almost to 100. It's the same thing. In fact, it's not hard to visualize that Ishvara is much more present in you than a piece of marble or black granite. Ishvara is present in these deities on the altar, but you could easily argue Ishvara is more present in you. It's not hard to appreciate that, and through that appreciation, this becomes a form of prayer. Teaching becomes a form of prayer. Karma yoga is prayer in action. English has a problem when you put the words in and action together. There's a little problem. So instead of saying it like that, we could say engaged prayer. How's that? Excuse me. Sorry. Prayer while engaged in daily activities. So that from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, if you're always aware of the presence of Ishvara in the world, in yourself, in your life, if you're constantly aware of Ishvara's presence, functionally you are praying from morning to night. That is full-time sadhana. And full-time sadhana is indispensable. I gave this metaphor long ago. For a small goal, you require a small effort. For a bigger goal, suppose your goal is to get a master's degree or a doctorate degree. For a bigger goal, it requires a much bigger effort, right? Here, in spiritual life, our goal is moksha. How big is that goal? It's not big. The term you might use is off the charts. So if for a big goal you require a big effort, for the goal of moksha, anything less than full-time effort is not enough. Make sense? That's the importance of karma yoga. But notice, as we've just defined karma yoga depends on bhakti and jnana. We have to erase those boundaries. This kind of karma yoga, the kind of karma yoga Sri Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita, and I distinguish that because I told you this story before. In the 1990s, when I was manager of the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam of my guru's ashram in Pennsylvania, I met many volunteers whose idea of karma yoga was to sweep the kitchen. That's karma yoga. Sweeping the kitchen is karma yoga. Sweeping your own kitchen isn't karma yoga. You see the problem? And that's how most people think. Sweeping the kitchen at the ashram is karma yoga. Sweeping your own kitchen is just sweeping. you can see how much off the mark the conventional understanding of karma yoga is. Conventional karma yoga is sweep the kitchen at the ashram. But karma yoga, as Sri Krishna teaches, is infused with bhakti and infused with jnanam. They're all three mixed up together. You put it in a mixture. You use this word khichdi for a mixture. So it's a khichdi. Instead of having rice and dal, you've got three. You've got karma, you've got bhakti, and you've got jnana. In this way, you live a life of full-time sadhana, which is essential. In the Bible, there's a beautiful expression, and I forget which of a disciple of Jesus is said to have spoken these words, that the expression is to pray without ceasing. To pray without ceasing is the expression found in the Bible. It's a very beautiful expression, but let's be very clear. What does it mean to pray without ceasing? Does it mean to stand here in front of the altar all day long and all day, all night? You understand better now. To pray without ceasing is karma yoga as described by Sri Krishna. It's to develop, the word he uses is madvyapashrayaha, which I would paraphrase as the constant awareness of Ishvara's sacred presence within you, in the world, in other people, in every aspect of your life. And, let's come back to our verse, and with that prayer, constant prayer, by the way, prayer is a karma, is it not? So many people wonder, how do you know prayer works? Well, prayer is a karma. Is it possible to have karma with no phala, no result? Every action has a result. Prayer, even if it's manasa, mental, or vachika, oral, it's still an action. So prayer has an effect, has a consequence, and that means further that to pray without ceasing would have a much more profound consequence, would it not? What is the profound consequence of praying without teaching? Sri Krishna says that in the second half of this verse. He says, mat prasadat, through my blessings. Here prasada means what is given by Ishvara. What is given by Ishvara when you receive something from the altar, consecrated food that's received from Ishvara, which is why we call it prasada. So here, prasada means blessings, mat prasadat. Through my blessings, the blessings which are the consequence of your karmas, your constant prayer, through my blessings, Sri Krishna says, avapnoti, one gains padam, a state. Avyayam padam, an unchanging state. Nothing spasmodic here. Avyayam padam, an unshakable state. Shashvatam, the eternal, unshakable state. He's obviously referring to your true self, we call Satchidananda Atma, the consciousness which is your essential nature, the consciousness which happens to be divine, but that divinity may be unrecognized. So here, Karma Yoga requires the acknowledgement and discovery of that inner divinity. With that discovery, your life is transformed. Nice, and many others have used this expression. You transform your life into a prayer. Your entire life becomes a prayer. Getting up in the morning, going to work, whatever you do, when your attention is always focused, when you're constantly aware of the sacred presence of Ishvara. The mad vyapashrayaha. With that abiding awareness, your life is converted into prayer. That is karma yoga. All right. Then, Chetasa sarva karmani, Chetasa sarva karmani, Mai sanyasya matparaha, Mai sanyasya matparaha, Buddhi yogamupashritya, Buddhi yogamupashritya, Matchitta satatam bhava, Matchitta satatam bhava. More blurring of boundaries. First, let's blur the boundary between grihastha and sannyasi. So there's one sannyasi sitting up here. There are many grihasthas sitting over there. And as far as Sri Krishna is concerned, there's no distinction whatsoever. Because he talks about, and we saw this way back in chapter 5, we saw Sri Krishna's understanding of sannyasa, which he says here, Chetasa, with your mind, sarva karmani, all actions, all deeds, mayi sanyasya, sanyasya, renouncing all deeds, mayi, Sri Krishna says, unto me. Renouncing all deeds unto me. What does he mean? If those of you who are here in chapter 5, you know what he's referring to, and that is having the recognition that you may do an action, you do not produce the result. That the most commonly quoted verse from the Bhagavad Gita that most people misunderstand. Sorry for laughing, but it's badly misunderstood. Karmani eva adhikara hate ma paleshu kadachana. Everyone mistranslates. You have a right to your actions. You have no right to the control. You have no right to the results. Well, it's not about rights. That's a Hindi meaning of adhikara. It doesn't have that meaning here. You are the author of your actions. Ishvara is the author of the results. That's what that verse really means. You are in charge, so to speak. Adhikara means what? You're in charge. What are you in charge of? You're in charge of what you do. You're not in charge of the results of your actions. Who is in charge of the results of your actions? Ishvara, whose intelligence pervades the world as the laws of the cosmos, the laws of the universe. Ishvara's intelligence. Everything happens according to Ishvara's intelligence, as my Guru said, according to Ishvara's order. So, if you have that understanding, you renounce your status. Actually, let's use a word. You renounce your falsely assumed adhikara. I'm being too complicated here. How do you like it when somebody says, I'm in charge, and they're not? It's pretty obnoxious, right? It's really obnoxious. I'm in charge. Do what I tell you. Yeah, it's very obnoxious. But suppose you think, to use the American expression, suppose you think you are the captain of your ship. You're in charge. You're in charge of everything that happens. Really? You? And of all people, you make it into a bad joke. Sorry. You get the point. Yes, we have so much power and capacity, all gifts of Ishvara. We are not in charge. We're not the boss of the universe. Ishvara is. to acknowledge that we have no control over the results of our actions is a kind of renunciation that Sri Krishna taught back in chapter 5. Let me say that again. To acknowledge the fact that you are not in charge of the results of your actions. That is a kind of renunciation. And that's a kind of renunciation that Sri Krishna says should be practiced by everyone without exception. So by grihastas and by sannyasis, another boundary erased. Everyone should be a sannyasi in this sense, recognizing that I am not in charge. I renounce my false sense of authority over my life. I renounce my false sense of control over every aspect of my life. I acknowledge everything is ultimately in Ishvara's hands. Of course, I still have to do what I have to do. I still have to follow dharma. I have to fulfill all my responsibilities. If I don't, then my life will be destroyed. But I do what I have to do and understand that the consequences are not in my hands. The consequences are in Ishvara's hands. That is the kind of renunciation Sri Krishna talks about here. Ch.18. It is a mental renunciation. Renunciation done with your mind. Ch.18, with your mind, sarva karmani sannyasya, renouncing all actions, mayi, unto me. Unto the karma phala data, the giver of the fruits of actions. And who does that? Matparaha. Again, that mat is a pronoun, I. Matpara, one whose para, whose focal point in life is mat me, one who is fixed on Ishvara, one whose attention is firmly established in Ishvara, as we said in the prior verse. And what about that person? Buddhi yogam upashritya. Upashritya, taking to, practicing. This is a very simple translation. Taking refuge in. Well, that's also okay. Taking refuge in or practicing what? Buddhi yogam. You didn't hear about that one, did you? You're thinking, wait a minute, there's jnana yoga. What is the difference between jnana yoga and buddhi yoga? Well, if you've studied the Bhagavad Gita thoroughly, you'll know the difference. Sri Krishna uses this term, buddhi yoga, to describe karma yoga. Buddhi yoga equals karma yoga. Why? Karma yoga is not what, I'm quoting myself, how's that? Karma yoga is not what you do. Karma yoga is the attitude with which you do it. Attitude here is buddhi. So again, sweeping the kitchen is what you do. Sweeping the ashram kitchen is what you do. It's not karma yoga. It's just karma. It becomes karma yoga with the right buddhi, with the right attitude. And that includes sweeping your own kitchen is equally karma yoga when it's done with the right attitude. So here, we're blurring another boundary between karma yoga and jnana yoga. He uses the term buddhi yoga. He's intentionally blurring all these boundaries. So practicing karma yoga, practicing buddhi yoga, and then what? He gives a command to Arjuna and a command to all of us. Mat chittaha satatam bhava. Bhava, you should be. And it's in second person. It's pointing to Arjuna. You should be satatam, constantly. You should be constantly mat chittaha, breaking about the words. Here the word mat comes one more time, that pronoun form of I. So you should always be one whose chitta, mind, is focused on mat, on me. So notice how jnana, bhakti, and karma are together here. And we can blur one more boundary. To have your mind satatam, always engaged on Ishvara, always engaged, doesn't that suggest meditation? Matchittaha? That term is used to refer to meditation on Ishvara. Satatam, continually. So to meditate on Ishvara means to turn your mind towards Ishvara. Matchittaha. So here he's blurring another boundary between meditation and karma yoga. Because if you constantly are aware of Ishvara's presence in yourself, in the world, in your life, to be aware of Ishvara's presence is a form of prayer, as we said before. We can also say it's a form of meditation. Whether you do it with your eyes open or your eyes closed. By the way, there's no rule that says you have to close your eyes to meditate. There's no rule. It's helpful, extremely helpful, to close your eyes for meditation, but that's not what meditation is about. Meditation has nothing to do with your eyes, it has everything to do with your mind. When your mind is focused on Ishvara, we can call that prayer, we can call that meditation, dhyana, we can call that bhakti, we can even call that jnana, because you know the Ishvara that you're focusing your mind on. You can't focus your mind on something unknown to you, right? As my guru said, you can't focus your mind on gagabugai. He liked to say that. How do you focus your mind on gagabugai? You don't know what gagabugai is. You can only focus your mind on what is known to you. So look at this word, matchittaha. To have your mind fixed on me implies jnana, knowledge of Ishvara, implies bhakti, devotion to Ishvara, present here and everywhere, implies karma yoga. When you are engaged in action, you continue to be aware of Ishvara's presence, and it further includes dhyana, meditation, because your mind is fixed on Ishvara. Satatam bhava. Do it continually. He tells Sri Krishna, and he tells us all. We'll see one more verse. Matchitta sarva durgani, matchitta sarva durgani, mat prasadat tarishyasi, mat prasadat tarishyasi, atachetvam ahankaran, atachetvam ahankaran, nashroshyasi vinangshasi, nashroshyasi vinangshasi. So there's that word again, mat chittaha. Having your chitta focus, chitta means mind. Having your mind focused on mat is this pronoun me. Have your mind focused on me. So mat chittaha, one whose mind is focused on Sri Krishna, is focused on Ishvara. For such a person, end of the second line, tarishyasi. O Arjuna, you will cross. Having your mind fixed on me, tarishyasi, you will overcome sarva durgani. Durga means difficulty. That which is difficult to approach is, Hindi may you say durg, the fort, that which is difficult to approach. Here, difficulties in life. Sarva durgani, all difficulties in life, tarishyasi, you will cross, you will overcome, mat prasadat. He says again, he said that 2 verses back, with my blessings. With my blessings, the blessings which are invoked through your constant prayer. Right? The blessings you receive as a consequence of your prayerful karmas. This is how it works. Blessings are the consequence of your prayer. In this case, prayer in action, engaged prayer, karma yoga. So, practicing karma yoga, having your mind always fixed on me, O Arjuna, sarva durgani, all of the challenges that lie ahead. Where are they having this conversation? On the battlefield. So you can imagine, as Sri Krishna says, sarva durgani, all difficulties. He's showing Arjuna the battlefield. All these challenges that lie ahead for you, Arjuna, tarishyasi, you will cross over, mat prasadat, with my blessings. Atachet, but if na shroshyasi, if you don't listen, if you will not accept what I have told you, which means if you continue to think you are the captain of your ship, you are in charge, you are the boss. If you think you are the boss, why would you think you are the boss? Ahankarat, due to your ego. If you egotistically think you are in charge of everything, of course, Krishna knows he is in charge of everything. So he tells Arjuna, if you, due to your ego, if you wrongly think you are in charge here and not me, then vinangshyasi, you will be destroyed. You will perish. Everything will be lost. And Sri Krishna uses this actually to introduce a new topic. That word atha usually is translated now and is often used to introduce a new topic. So in the next series of verses, Sri Krishna is now going to talk about what it would be a good the opposite of karma yoga. So we have to make up a word. First of all, a karma yogi, there is a karma yogi, and there is a karmi, is the opposite of a karma yogi. A karma yogi is one who thinks they are the boss. Or there are other words we use, bhogi. Bhogi is one who wants to enjoy everything in life. So here, in the next sequence of verses, Sri Krishna talks about the anti-karma yogi, the so-called karmi or bhogi, and the consequences of not embracing these teachings. We'll see that in our next class. Notice that this final teaching of Sri Krishna in chapter 18 is so important and so profound. Notice that we've slowed down. We're not seeing so many verses. We can't. We have to take time to really absorb these teachings as we go along. Okay, a couple of important announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our new Samashraya support group, which is a support for families in which there is a family member struggling with mental illness. So it's a support group for caregivers of family members struggling with mental illness. Vasanti coordinates that support group. The first meeting was quite effective, I understand. So please come if you are struggling with these issues. The support group, Samashraya, will meet here tomorrow at 4 o'clock, 4 to 5:30. Then tomorrow we also have satsang, our summer session, summer schedule. Satsang at 6 p.m. If the weather is nice, we'll sit outside. If the weather is raining, of course, we'll meet here. And then finally, to remind you, next Saturday we'll be celebrating Guru Purnima. So what I would request is make sure you come at 10 o'clock, the time of the meditation session. We'll start with a simple puja. We'll chant Guru Stotra, and we'll do perhaps some meditation using Guru Mantra. And in this way, we'll celebrate Guru Purnima. And then this Bhagavad Gita class will continue next Saturday, as usual. So we'll have 10 to 11 Guru Purnima celebration, followed by Bhagavad Gita class next week. And with that, we'll conclude our class with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shrinvan Utabasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaveta Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Hamritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.